So there are several options, of course, how to play with your bishops, but today we'll do really some problems that you can meet, especially if you're a beginner, and especially if you don't know where to place your bishop. So, oh, great, we have really so far many viewers. David Keller is here, Milk Shakespeare, my brother is here, Arun is here, and Tammy Schneider is also here. So very good. We're gonna wait a little bit for more viewers. I've announced it this stream, so maybe someone can challenge me for a game. So before, good day, Milk Shakespeare. So maybe I'm gonna play maybe one game. Devin is here, very good. I have some apple juice, homemade apple juice. It tastes really good. So maybe someone wants to play a game with me, just as a warm-up, so then we can start with our session. Yeah. We have here Slackworm. Oh, David is challenging me. Dave is good. Dave is good. Let's try this. We have David Keller from Germany. I have to just arrange the sound. Okay. What to do? Let's go into Bogo Indian, East Indian, Nimzo Indian setup. Okay. We're gonna play here. We're waiting him to play knight c3. Oh, he plays this line. a3 line. This gives me some opportunities. Very good. d5. Cheers, yeah. Okay, let's go here. And rook c1, rook c8, c5. Getting use of... Okay. Maybe b5, queen to a4. Let's break it here. Let's break now the position. Getting use of this c-file mess here. Oh, Luka Bolchevich is here. Very good. Luka Bolchevich is a guy from Križevci. We know each other for long years. But we'll leave that to another topic. Do you agree, Luka? Once I'll tell you the story about Luka, if Luka allows me. Okay, there is again this mess that we've talked about. Okay, we have now this C-file problems. So, you see now we have this tension on the C-file. Probably we're getting another tempo against the queen. Let's take it. We'll sacrifice probably the rook. We'll sacrifice probably the rook. We can do it like this. I think. Let's calculate now. Knight d5 is okay, it's playable. Maybe bishop d3, knight c5. Knight c5 attacking the queen, or first a check. Yeah, we could do something. think I have a good position here. Queen a5, check. Let's try it this way. Bishop d3. Bishop takes f8, knight to f8 and covering the bishop. So, something went wrong here. If I play check, then he can go bishop b4. Knight c5 seems like a good idea. Knight c5. And then queen to a5. If queen d2, then knight b3. Okay. Queen here. I think I'm gonna sacrifice the rook. Queen d2 probably, then queen 8. Yeah, that's now messed up. That's now messed up. We have a check. We have first a check. Or rook here. That could be an option. We have now two options. Two good options. Rook d8. He takes. I take. But no, let's go here. I have this in between. So we're gonna do it. Check. Check, check. Knight d4. Should I go? Let's go here. Still. We're gonna add some time for my friend. Okay. Now it's time to pin him till the end. Okay. David resigned. Good game. So I hope we can start now. Do you agree? We'll talk now about the problems of bishops. I've set up some examples that I used already in my basics in chat series, but now with different examples, and you can also participate. You can also ask some questions if you're. Yeah, Dave, it was a good game. So, okay, we're starting now. We have here Banconian. We're gonna play later if you agree. I'm not going to accept no challenges. I just wanted to play one game as a warm-up so everyone can join. Okay, here's the grip. So when we talk about bishops, bishops activities, of course, a very important segment, and of course we want to place our bishops very active on most active squares, on most active diagonals, but there are these problems of bishops. Some we have this bad bishop situations and locked bishop situations. If you see here this position, this bishop on c6 and bishop on c5, both of these bishops are bad because we have here locked our opponent's bishop with our pawn chain, so this bishop is out of game. And the bad bishop means when the bishop is of course blocked out by its own pawn. So today we'll talk about this locked positions where we can lock our opponent's bishop with our own pawns, but the bad bishop is something else. The bad bishop strategy you can really apply in middle games. We'll talk about bad bishop strategies really often here, and it will be a very, very important topic in the future. And the bad bishop strategy will do, I think, even more lessons, like 3, 4, 5 lessons about the bad bishop. But today we're talking about this locked bishop positions in which we have blocked out with our pawn chain our opponent's bishop, and the problem then afterwards is that our opponent cannot play with the piece, especially in an early stage of the game. This could be a problem because when you lock, for instance, one bishop like this, it's like that you are playing here with one piece up in the continuation of the game. So I've prepared now some examples, and it was one of my games. And we can also, of course, ask you can ask me some questions if you have troubles to understand anything. Please ask your questions. It's very important to participate, and I think this series is much better, for instance, than the series Basics in Chess, where I just recorded a video and you gave some comments, of course, on that topics, but sometimes I missed your comments, or I didn't answer some questions here. It's very important to participate and that we can solve positional problems together, that you ask questions. If you have troubles with even beginners mistakes, please ask me your questions, because it's very important for you to be also part of this stream. So I wanted to show you first one game. It was one of my games here in the Sicilian, and my opponent went into this close Sicilian with this bishop to c4 aggressive line. After e6 we have castling, and now well, it's this very annoying attack by the bishop, and most of the times you see your opponent is trying to make the move f5, and he's trying to break your position with his light square bishop. I played a normal idea here, knight from g to e7, and now e5. And what we can notice now immediately, that we can solve the positional problems with one move. And maybe you can now suggest me one move and solve really our position problems. So the question is now how to either you can make a good position and you can block your opponent's bishops, or we'll have a new position in which our opponent will have troubles on the d file. So maybe you can answer now the question, which is now the best next moves. So let's battle against this bishop and find a good move. It is a very aggressive setup by my opponent, and f6 was one of the suggested moves. It is possible, but yeah, maybe there are now some troubles here after bishop to f6. It is playable, but there is one better move, and here the viewer under the name I don't know you said the move d5, and d5 is a great move, I think. Very good. d5, because if e takes d6 en passant happens, then we have queen to d6, and our opponent could maybe try here, pardon me, let's go knight to e4, attacking, queen to c7, and if now knight to c5 happens, then we have knight to d4. So this is something that white has to take care of. White will lose a pawn, and then d6 is okay, but you're forcing now your opponent doesn't have to react here after d6, but after d5 he has to react, and the only way that he can react now is this en passant situation. After e takes d6 we set queen to d6, so knight to e4 doesn't work, but in the continuation of the game we would simply fix our pawn with the move b6, and then after castling we would then have the opportunity to attack the d file. We would build then battery, and you see now we have a perfect control of the d4 square, like usually in the Sicilian, especially in this Sicilian that I like to play, this hyper accelerated dragon Sicilian. So if you have troubles maybe to play against e4, I've created this series, the hyper accelerated dragon Sicilian defense from black's perspective, created more than 25 videos about this ideas, and you can maybe study it if you have really troubles to battle against e4. So now you see we have a control of the d4, and the problem is now this would be then a long-term backward pawn. That's the problem of this position. So after castling, then I play rook d8, and I have a really perfect control of the d4. First, of course, I have to fix my pawn here with the move b6, but my opponent will have troubles around the square d4, and I could really maybe even further build a battery, maybe even with 2 rooks here on the d file. With the support of the queen, you see the f4 pawn is hanging. Still, I'm controlling also the e5 square, so our opponent cannot play outposts on our side of the board. We've mentioned it. Our opponent is trying to do maybe some outposts. Chess is all about getting your pieces on the other side of the board, where your opponent, where we could have, of course, the advantage, but here it's so far not possible, and the evaluation here is already much better for black. Positionally, I'm not sure which player would win against me in this particular position. When we talk about positions, of course, I would lose probably against a great tactician, but here it's really a nice and compact position. So after move d5, my opponent played the move bishop to b3. I castled. So is everything solved with this e takes d6 ideas and f6 ideas? Should I proceed with that idea? Yeah. Yeah, because it's a delay here between live when I say something and when it's on the stream. So can we go on with the analysis? Yeah. Milk Shakespeare says makes sense. Yeah, because there are dispositional ideas, of course, of backward pawns. We'll talk about backward pawns also as a middle game strategy. So this would be then really backward pawn in this scenario. So as we said, okay, we can then continue. Here my opponent tried d3, and that's exactly what I meant. He has troubles to play the move d4. D4 would be then very problematic here after queen to b6 and similar stuff. So maybe d4, you see here, he takes d4, knight d4, here queen to b6 then is then a possibility. Knight to f5 challenging here. We would then have this supported pawn. You see, then this would be a backward pawn. Again, I think black hasn't solved really the positional problems. We can then, after knight takes d4, play also with our other knight. But these are things that you have to calculate sometimes in your positions for yourselves. Here, my opponent played d3, and I simply attacked the bishop because we said our opponent is trying here to make a pawn breakthrough. He's trying to crack the position with g4, f5, getting use of his light square bishop. When we talk about bishop's activity, you see our opponent has already a bad bishop because his bishop is blocked out. Our bishop is maybe blocked out by this pawn on e5, but it's not a problem because we talked about this idea f6, but it's very tricky sometimes. You see now with this option f6 is perfectly fine because we have a king security, we have a nice piece activity. An immediate f6 move is sometimes risky. You weaken the pawn structure in front of the king too much. So now f6 would be a possibility, but here you see our bishop, our opponent's bishop here on c1 is really bad. This bishop is also bad, and this position, although it began as a closed game, still can be, I think, an open game if something changes in the center. So I thought here as an idea to chase the bishop on b3 would be a good idea. My opponent tried queen to e1, which is the natural idea. He's trying now to play something like queen to h4, knight to g5, and then deliver checkmate. After I play something like h6 in order to prevent checkmate, then he's trying maybe f5 pawn sacrifice, but then his bishop gets to h6, and that's the common attack here in close Sicilians. These are the common tricky stuff that white can use, and that's why I had to be fast on the queen side. So I played here the move a6, and I wanted to here play the move b5 and then lock the bishop with c4. As I said in the beginning, we're trying to lock our bishop. Maybe we will not trap the bishop in a way in which we'll trap it, and maybe the bishop will be have to give up for a pawn or something. But at least we can get the subject of this lesson today is how to lock one particular piece, and when you lock it, then it's like playing with an extra piece in the continuation of the game. So here my opponent tried a4, and I simply proceeded with this idea: bishop to d7. He played bishop to a2. I played b5. He tried b3 to somehow protect his pawn here on a4, because if he takes, then I could again a takes b4, a takes b5, and proceed here with b4. He tried b3, and now try to see, the question here is try to see now the forced sequence that actually locks the bishop here on a2. So that's the question. So what move order locks now the bishop here on a2? So you see, in this game, my opponent started the game with a very active bishop on c4. He started with such a great activity of that bishop, but as I said, the subject of this lesson today is that his best piece became actually his biggest problem. C4 actually helps him out, because we're breaking where he wants to position to be broken. Now we said we want to reach this position in which he has a bad bishop here, where the bishop is blocked out by its own pawns. So I've seen here this question, it's b4. You see, b4, very good. And then afterwards, what's the next move now to lock really the light square bishop? Yeah, b4 starts with, and now the next move. Now let's see the next move. Okay, now the next move to lock really his bishop on a2. What would be the move? c4 again helps him out. c4, you see, first of all, our pawn on b4 is hanging, but c4 is actually cracking the pawn. Yeah, d4, and look at this position now. Very good. c4, you see, I think there is a way maybe for this bishop to get out in a more couple of moves, you know, although maybe this is a bad piece, but again the bishop gets active. So here d4, and from this point on, if you can notice, it's like white is playing without the piece through the whole game, which is really incredible. Whenever you feel that you can do this, it's actually a position where we have an extra piece. Really wild stuff. And as we said, the bishop, the light square bishop in the beginning was the best piece of white. Now it became his main problem. That's really wild sometimes in chess. Your bishop's activity can really be 0 till 100%. So now it's about, I don't know, 10%, because still you can make something happen. Maybe you can play c3, bishop to b1, bishop to c2, and then try to maneuver your bishop. But it's really a long-term plan, and it's bad, first of all, because after the move c3 we can simply capture a pawn with b, or with the d pawn, also the b3, then it's a problem. So, and you see now, as we said, it's really like we're playing the game with an extra piece. In the continuation of the game, I really didn't even calculate anything anymore. I just felt I cannot lose this. My opponent tried this one. I played bishop to c6. Then I simply traded off more pieces. I simply wanted to trade off more pieces. Queen to d5, knight to d5, and I won the game. You see, after a couple more moves. I could have played f6. Just now, it's now really time to trade off more pieces and going into maybe an endgame in which I have this knight against this bishop. All the other pieces are off the board, and I could maybe find a good square here for my knight. So you see, again, this bishop is simply locked by his own pawn structure. So it's really wild. You see, I have also another example. It could be maybe an Italian game. Here the Italian goes most of the time the gioco piano, bishop to c5, and you see now many times white can play the spinning idea, but there is even a possibility here to go with h6 g5. It's not a problem, and you see again this bishop on g3 can be a problem after d6. Still, this is an equal game, but in the gioco piano, getting out with your bishop in an early stage of the game can be really sometimes a trouble. I've found really a great example. It's a game played by Wilhelm Steinitz. Here again the gioco piano with similar ideas, g5, and here Wilhelm Steinitz played a very aggressive move, h5, again trying to lock the bishop. In the game h4 was played, but let's see now the possible continuation after knight to g5. What would be now the best continuation after knight to g5? Here is also a trap, I think, that you can use in gioco piano games. So what would be now our next continuation after knight to g5? It's a very, very aggressive line. There are better lines for white. White doesn't have to take the pawn, but it's actually poison pawn here. It's really a nice trap in the gioco piano. So what would be now our next h4? Yeah, very good. Arun. So h4. Here, knight to f7 can be played. We play queen to e7. Our opponent can maybe take out the rook, and now we can take out the bishop. So h takes g3, h takes g3, and what to do now? What would be now the best continuation? Let's see now the winning move. What would be now the next best move? Queen g7 is attacking the knight. It's of course a very good idea, but are there maybe better ideas to attack the knight? Bishop f7. Oh, Spielwolf is here. Heige. Queen g7 is so. It seems like the normal idea, but there is a better idea, a similar idea with the same idea, but much more aggressive, much better. So do we have bishop f7? Where bishop f7? No, it's now black to move. Black to move. Yeah, I've seen now queen to h7 here. Very good. You see how sometimes in chess we can make this tiny little mistakes. Queen to g7 is not the same like queen to h7. Queen to h7 comes with a direct threat. Here, after something like knight to f7, maybe to stay with your piece on the board, then knight to g4. If we would have the queen here on g7, then we wouldn't threaten here the checkmate on h2. So really wild stuff. So these are the tiny little things. As I said, when we are attacking we have to be precise. It's not the same where the queen is on g7, h7, and f6 and similar stuff. Here queen to h7 wins the game. But okay, in the game after move h5, h4 was played, and now here Steinitz played bishop to g4 with the same idea. If you try again h takes g5, we'll have again h4. You cannot take out with the knight. because of the pin. Here, if you try knight to h4, you lose the game immediately. If you try bishop to h4, rook to h4, then maybe g takes f6, but now queen to f6, and we're continuing again with the pin. We can again build this battery on the h file, and again black has serious trouble. So I didn't want to show you the whole game, it's not the point about that, but I wanted to show you when you develop in any opening, and that's I think the most important thing about this lessons, is that you should always first think about it. Should I place my bishop there? Because if you place your bishop on g5 like this, h6, maybe you can even take out. So you have to consider the option to take out the bishop, or you have to consider the option that your opponent will probably try to chase your bishop further. So that's why we have to be careful with our bishops. You have seen in this example, in this game, my opponent tried to be aggressive with his bishop, but then his bishop became the main problem. In the same here. So it's very tricky. Chess is really tricky, and sometimes our bishop's activity can be really splashed in one moment, in one move. Our bishop can be really the worst piece on the board, so really be careful when you prepare openings. Try to see what kind of bishop's activity you get out of these openings. You see, it's very important. Here is also one example that I wanted to show you. It's a gameplay by Anthony Miles against Vasily Smyslov. Here is the question. So which bishop is bad here? Which bishop first? The first question, which bishop is bad here by black? So it's white to move. Which bishop is bad? So that's the question. So yeah, we have here an answer. So the dark square bishop, it's bad. So you see, black has problems to develop the dark square bishop. So in order to make that happen, he has bishop on f8 is very bad. So in order to improve his bishop's activity, he has to make an e6 move. E6 move, you see our knight is very good, controls both of the squares, f6 d6. g6 is a problem, because there are some tactical shots with e6. If g6 happens, then e6 double attack against the bishop and the rook here on h8. But in order to stay active with our pieces, we have to improve our activity in order to play further against this bad bishop on f8. Black has maybe the bishop pair, but black is also lacking in development, so that's why it's time to freeze him a little bit like this. We want to have this position frozen. We want to stay with the centralized knight. We want to stay with our queen on d4. We want to stay with our bishop here. We don't want to change the activity of these three pieces. So how to improve, but also secure the king and stay on a very nice path, sort of, in order to play against this bad bishop, because the bad bishop on f8 is now our strategy. You should really memorize it sometimes like this, that a bishop, a piece, or maybe a rook, or maybe a queen can be actually a strategy in a middle game. It's nothing special, so it's simple as that. It can be really a plan. Sometimes we try to overcalculate ourselves with ideas, what happens if that happens, but this is really a pattern. This bishop on f8 is a pattern. It has to be like a trigger for you, and then you say to yourself, something is going on with that bishop. So how to proceed here, how to stay with our pieces very active, because we don't want to move the queen, we don't want to move our knight, we don't want to move our bishop here. So let's find now the best next move. Here is the question. Yeah, very good. We have by Spielov a very good move. He said Rook D1, F4, Castle short. Okay, very good. I like this answers. It's really good that you're participating with some answers. It's not a problem if the answer is wrong, but actually you gave really good ideas. Rook D1, uh, Castle short. Yeah, okay, but Castle short is a problem. I think the queen could be endangered with some ideas. Let's see. Kingside castling. So here, bishop to h3 maybe. Discovered attack, getting rid of this bishop. Knight c5 seems like a good idea, but again, something like this. It could be a possibility, bishop to h3. f4, again with the same idea. Bishop to h3. Let's see, let's see the engine move. I didn't use now the engine. Yeah, bishop to h3, and it's better for black. The evaluation is -1 for black after f4. So we want to stay with our activity, and we're playing against this bishop, and we said in the beginning, when we feel that's maybe an example you should remember. When we feel that our opponent has a bad piece, one of the best strategies is to trade off every other piece. So then we can continue with a good piece against a bad piece. You know what I'm trying to say? So I hope you understand. So here it's exactly the same. He has a bad piece. Our pieces are good. So our strategy is to trade off everything to go into a line where we have a good piece and he has a bad piece. How to trade off more pieces? How to force a further trades of pieces? That's our question. And I've seen the move Rook D1, but there is a much more aggressive way to play the move Rook D1. There are two ways actually to play the move Rook D1. We have talked on my first lesson about the 3 stages of the opening, and the 3 stages of the opening were first developing minor pieces, then secure the king by castling, and then maneuver the queen from the first rank and getting a rook connection. After Rook D1, we don't have a rook connection. How to make a rook connection and still force? Yeah, that's good. We have queenside castle. Yeah, great. You see, even it seems so that our king could be endangered, but now that's a great move. Queenside castling. And please answer this question. Do you like now this position for white? Although black has here a bishop pair, why we have here a little bit weakened pawn structure. So please just let me know if you like now this position. So if you feel the position, do you feel that's a good position for yourself? It is kind of risky, but we're playing against a bad piece. We're not okay, thank you, Andrei Varov. Am I reading that good? I think I can still read Cyrillic. Andrei Varov. Andrei, am I correct? How I read your name? Yeah, that's exactly the point. Our pieces are active, and even if he tries maybe some attacks here with queen to a5, he cannot just play with the queen in the attack, you know? He has to participate with some pieces, yeah. Hi, Paulo. Paulo is really a great guy. He gives always this long comments on computer relations, opening theory. His comments are really great. So okay, my brother and my sister are watching. My brother says that he is gonna carry the refrigerator. my sister asked me before the stream if I could carry her refrigerator, her new refrigerator, and I told her I cannot, so I have arranged stream, and and um, and then my brother had to carry the refrigerator for me. So thank you, bro. So my Cyrillic is good. Andrei says my Cyrillic is good. Andrei Varov, probably from Bulgaria, I guess. So yeah, Paolo, you have really great comments. I really like them, and actually sometimes you have noticed I don't respond to your comments because you actually said everything. So that's why I cannot agree more with you when you write these long comments. Really great. Read Paulo's comments. They're really instructive about opening theory, about strategies. Really great one. Okay, we haven't reached now this position. You see, black pieces are a little bit paralyzed, and we said that we don't mind in this position. We don't mind. We don't care. Even if we trade everything, still black is continuing the game with the bad piece. So we would maybe have a position in which we have this good bishop against this bad bishop, and it's not a problem. Our main strategy is now to trade off more pieces. Trading off pieces can be really a strategy in an opening, in a middle game. It's not a problem. It doesn't have to be always so complicated. We don't have to play really, I don't know, weak square strategies, backboard pawn strategies. Here, our main goal is to reach a fast and end game stage really fast, to be faster. And here in the game, you see now bishop to e6 was played. So how do we proceed? How do we proceed here? Do we go into trades of pieces now? Are we going into trades of pieces? So we have talked about, he has a bad piece. We're talking about bishops today, but it can be also a knight. It can be maybe a rook. We can play, our whole strategy can be arranged against one particular piece, which is really great in chess sometimes. Consider this option, think about it more. Really doesn't have to be complicated. So should we trade off our pieces if we're going now into our strategy? Yeah, thank you for your answer, second knight. So we trade off queen d8. Anthony Mouse played here an outstanding. It was a brutal, outstanding positional understanding that he showed here. Maybe this game has never been shown. I don't know, in maybe even in books. In my opinion, it was really one of the most beautiful strategy games. So queen d8, rook d8, knight g5. He attacks further. He wants now to go here. Black has to protect the piece, and here after the move knight to e6, f takes e6. What have we reached here? What have we reached here? Okay, how do you feel about this position now? Yeah, if queen a5, there are problems on the d file for opponent. We can analyze in this particular moment. Here, after queenside castling, queen to a5, knight c5 is the suggested line by the engine. So again, nothing dramatically changes. You cannot take, you lose the bishop. So okay. Yeah, good bishop by really, and now we have reached this position, which is really incredible. And it's no, bishop h3 is not the next move. We have to secure now the locked position. We have to lock now the dark squares, because you see now this bishop is bad. It cannot go somewhere. We have to lock it with our own pawns, and it's actually like we're yeah, to new house, Luca. Yeah, that's exactly the strategy. Spielwolf. E3, F4, H4. Now we're locking the bishop. We're solving now the position on the king side by putting all of our pawns. We're locking now the bishop, and we can play down an endgame in which it's almost like we have an extra piece. So you know what I'm trying to say? I hope everything is clear. If you don't understand anything, everything, then yeah, Andre h4 here was played by, but f4 is also possible. Here see after g6, here f4 was played, and so f4 e3. We're just locking the bishop, and now we're going into an endgame. We can now maneuver this bishop somewhere here, rook here, and our opponent is only playing with the rook, and it's almost like an endgame in which we're one piece up. So sometimes it's very, very important to understand the strategies. And as I said, this was a game between Anthony Miles in 1986 against Vasily Smyslov. Vasily Smyslov was the former world champion, and you know, probably some of you haven't seen this game, and it wasn't so exposed, it wasn't so popularized, but in my opinion, really, this was a brutal strategy game. It was a really incredible game. How he went here into an endgame. Now he has the bishop. Here you see black is desperately trying to lock the get this bishop somehow active with g5, but king to d2 was played, bishop to g7. This bishop is out of game. You see rook c1, rook to the king march on here, c3 here, desperate try again. Here g5, h5 again, further locking the bishop. Really good move. Here b2, another problem. Now the king moves on. Here we can take. You see now the bishop is really trapped. After f4 we can even cement further the position with e3. Here rook to b2. Basically every move now by white is simply good. It's here rook to b1, here cutting off, bishop g6, getting use of the d file, and after rook d1 here black resigned. It's really something that you should resign. So this rook will come into the game. Pardon me. Here we can attack these two weaknesses. We can even further cement. We have to take basically here one pawn, maybe the a pawn or the c pawn, and just march on. And this king is also out of game, and you cannot play king to f8 in order to improve your king's activity, because you get checkmated on d8. So how did you like this example? In my opinion, really a strategy masterpiece. So really incredible game, how he realized this potential trades of pieces played. And you see now the problems also about development, how one piece, really just one piece, can cost you the whole game. That's why in the first two elections, if you have seen, we have talked about piece activity, development, securing the king, playing with your pieces, with every piece out, getting really nice first activity, and then try to do something. So it was really a masterpiece. So here we have a new position. It was a game played by Jose Raul Capablanca here. Jose Raul Capablanca with the black pieces against William Winter, and this game was played in 1919, so 102 years ago. Really, Capablanca knew his stuff even in 1990. So here we have this perfect example of the bad of this locked position. So let's play against the bad piece. So thank you, Spilo, for your good words. So if we have a pin, we have to get out of this pin. It's really important now. So here Capablanca played move g5, knight takes f6, bishop to queen to f6, bishop g3. We have talked about, we have now this locked position of the bishop. How to proceed here? What's the strategy when we have locked positions, when we have the locked bishop? What's the main strategy? g5, very good. Okay, you have answered probably. The comment is coming later. So we're talking about now about this position. What's now the main strategy when we have a locked position of the bishop? So when the bishop is locked, what's our main strategy? What's our goal now? Very good. Bishop g4, bishop g4, with ideas to go into further trades of pieces. So here bishop g4 was played by the legendary Jose Raul Capablanca. So and we don't care. We don't mind this position. We don't think about this position anymore. There are no tactics. We don't think about, yeah, very good. Yeah, Joshua said it. Simplify the position. Simplification. Great expression by Joshua. So bishop g4 simplification. We're just trading off more pieces, and we don't mind what's going on the board. We're continuing the game with an extra piece. We have maybe also our bad piece here on d6, but even if we have one, we can still even sacrifice here the pawn just in order to make our bishop again active. But his bishop on g3 here, our opponent is really bad. Bishop g3, h3, bishop to f3, queen to f3, and now after f6, this bishop is locked, and it's now a much better position for black. Black will find, as I said, some ways to get his bishop active in the game. King to g2 was played, and now a5, a4, king to f2, and now king to e3. We have again a desperate try. You see h4. We're just continuing here. H takes g5, h takes g5. We have b3, and now c6. King rook to a2, and now b5. So you see, as I said, still our bishop is not good. Our bishop is blocked out by our own pawns, but the difference between our bishop and this bishop is that this bishop will probably find a way into the game. This bishop is not. This pawn, this bishop, we shouldn't call it even a bishop. This bishop we should call a pawn. This is a pawn, and it's not even a pawn, and it cannot move here to g4. It's really messed up pawn, sort of. We could call it a messed up pawn, a pawn that cannot move further. So that's why it's a better position here for Capablanca. Rook to a1 here, now c4. We talked about this. We're sacrificing some material just in order to get our bishop activity. Although we'll maybe lose one pawn, but at least we're continuing the game with the bishop, and now it's much better here. Rook to b5. This was a move order, but many lines now can happen. I just want you to realize the strategy that can happen. It's not important now to calculate tactics. What happens if that happens? The strategy is more important. And when you have such a game, I want you to realize these ideas, and then when you solve the strategy, it's much easier to find tactics. So tactics are a cause of strategy. So that's why the rook to b4 here, after the move rook to d4 in this position, here William Winter resigned. It's simply a +1 piece position here for black. So okay, and these were a couple of examples. We can you can maybe text me some more if you have similar examples. I have a couple more, but I think you got the grip. And at the end of our session, I will prepare now. And today I'm preparing really these masterpieces in chess. Today, our first one, in which the basic principles of chess have been applied. And you see now that sometimes when you realize what's going on the board, it's much easier to see now the best next move. And our first game of this series, I'm not going to reveal you what was the game. And please, if you know what game it was, please don't write it in the comment section below, because I just want you then afterwards to say what game it was. So we're starting now with a great game, and it's an incredible game. It's really one of the most beautiful games in history. But you'll see now how in this game basically the main principles of chess were applied. So here e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. We have the Rui Lopez, a6. Again, I'm pointing out, we've talked about these ideas. If we get challenged in chess, it's very important to be aggressive. So in every other position, when we get attacked, we have to search always for counterattacks. But now, of course, it's not possible. But at least, as I always like to say, we have to consider sometimes the move a4. When we have really dynamic positions, when we get attacked, and we'll come to that part also in the continuation of this game. When we get attacked, retreating is something that you should think about the last. The first thing to think about is a counterattack. But now a counterattack is unfortunately not possible here. Bishop to f4, knight to f6, castling. Bishop to e7, we have the closed rook Lopez. Rook to e1, and now b5. So every move now by here white was basically a move in which the basic principles have been applied. So b5, bishop to b3. But again, we're considering the option: is it possible to play bishop to bishop takes b5? So far it's not possible, so that's why but then only after we calculate the potential bishop sacrifice, then it's time to think about retreat. So here bishop to b3, here d6. Okay, I'm gonna set up again some questions. We have talked about pawn central control in our first example, how to get our pawn central control by getting the pawn on d4. So how to prepare this? That's our first question. So pawn central control, we want to get our, yeah, white can take bishop to c6. We are answering every question in this video. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. We're answering every question. So let's go back. Bishop takes c6 is the so-called pardon me, I have to go to bishop b5, a6, bishop takes c6. Okay, here d takes c6. It is aligned, it is playable. Yeah, c3 is the correct move, c3 by Spielhoff, but I want to first also solve this. Okay, this is the so-called exchange variation of Louis Lopez, and in my opinion, this exchange variation you should know by heart. There, simply the game becomes really wild now. Pawn moves are possible. Here, knight to e5 is not so good because queen to d4 will happen, and you have really some troubles. So you mean after a6, yeah, we can take the knight, but it's really, in my opinion, it's an early stage of the game in which you should not give up your bishop pair. At least you have to make something happen out of the bishop pair. After move bishop to c6 and d takes c6, it's something that you have to prepare at home, how this game is proceeding, how you want the game to continue. Now maybe here castling can be played, then here d3, knight to d2, bishop to g5. It is playable, but as I said, it's part of your style, how you want to play the game. In my opinion, it's not so good giving up the bishop pair in such an early stage of the game. A stronger opponent will kick your butt in the exchange variation of the Louis Lopez. But okay, you can study it. It's a pragmatic choice. It's a direct choice. Some of good players like to exchange the variation because here after a6, bishop to c6, and then d takes c6. It is a clear fight line in which we're battling now we have now the bishop versus knight middle game, and the bishop versus knight middle game, the main strategy about the bishop versus knight middle game is to now protect your squares of the bishop that you gave up. So it means now after the move bishop takes c6 and the d takes c6, it's now time to build sort of a fortress with d3. Maybe d3 c4 would be risky, then you risk maybe backboard pawn, but d3 maybe a4 b3 bishop to b2 could be an idea. Then it's really time to put many pawns on light squares in order to protect your light squares on the board, because you gave up your key protector of light squares, which is of course the light square bishop. So whenever you give up maybe a bishop for a knight, yeah, creating a fortress, that would be sort of a main strategy here. Although there are many lines, but as a strategical plan this could work. So maybe even h3 to play something like that, never allow this bishop to come here and similar stuff. But in my opinion, it's a risky choice. You have to then know by heart what you're doing. Then you have to have really nice preparation in this particular line. So it is playable. It has been played millions and millions of times, but in my opinion, it's you should first start to study regular games with the bishop pair with common strategies and things like this. What's the reason behind black knight from f6 cannot take the pawn on e4 from them? You can. It's not a point about that. There's also this line, this open rule Lopez, knight takes e4, then rook to e1 or d4. It's still playable. It's not a problem. But the problem is actually this one. You didn't play with your bishop. That's the first problem. So you didn't play with your bishop. You have to play one tempo with your bishop and then castling. So you're 2 moves far away from king security. And you see now with the move d4, we're opening that file. And then again, you have to know what you're doing. So here b5 would be the main line, bishop to b3, here d5, and then something like d takes e5. White has grabbed the pawn back, but still this is a pawn that you have to take care of. The bishop to g4 could happen and similar stuff, attacking further. So these are really tricky positions. So you see, but first also the d5 pawn is so the main line is something like bishop to e6. White continues the game with pressure against the d5. Black is continuing the pressure against the pawn on e5. It is playable, as I said, but the main goal and the main can you please do where to place the rooks given to your choice? Yeah, we will do that also. We'll do that also, where to place your rooks on which files. But actually the rooks are well, it's bad to say it maybe like this, but I like to call them stupid pieces. The stupid because they're following basically other pieces, you know. The rook comes into the game because something else has happened. Knights and bishops are more strategical pieces than rooks. We're not building rooks, we're not building strategy after rooks. I hope I can answer your question, Tyrell. So it's not that we're forming our main strategy around rooks. It's something, the rooks are following our strategy. Yeah, problem of black's king is that, yeah, the king will stay in the center. So we always evaluate these lines when we take out the pawn in the center. How far away are we from king security? And we can reach also king security not only by castling. We can play king to f8, and from white's perspective, king to f1. But again, you have to see if that works for you. You have to be very careful. You have to prepare something there to be familiar with its tactical lines that can happen if you stay with the king in the center. So we'll talk about king in the center positions also, but as I said, I really want to first make introductions, and then we're moving up to more complex ideas, to more aggressive ideas. So, but Terrell, I hope I can answer your question. So strategies are not built around rooks. Strategies are built around pawn structures, minor piece activities, king securities. The rooks are simply following previous strategies. We're not building. So that's why if we play maybe a minority attack, we'll talk about minority attack where we're maybe playing in a position 2 versus 3 here, then of course our rook's activity will be on that file where we're building the minority attack. So that's why you see we played the minority attack strategy, and then the rooks are following that strategy. You know, it's not that the rooks are building our strategy. I really hope I can answer that question. So, and basically the rooks you should place on open files, and we'll have also a great example in this game that I've prepared here, how white here played an outstanding game with his rook. So, and Rook Connection, we have talked about these 3 stages of the opening. So first, developing minor pieces, securing the king by castling, developing queen from the first rank, getting it to the second, third rank, and then connect the rooks. Rook connection is very important because the rooks have to be sort of glued together. They're following each other. They have to maybe build batteries on files, on ranks. Very important stuff. But basically, as I said, the rooks are stupid pieces. As you can memorize it like this. They're dumb pieces. So I like to call them dumb pieces. So They're just following everyone else. They're not Stockfish. Uh, the only player that I've seen that maybe builds strategies with rooks is Stockfish. But Stockfish, you don't understand why Stockfish places a rook there. Stockfish plays a rook somewhere just in order to sacrifice the rook, to sacrifice the dumb piece. So now, okay. So bishop to b5, we have talked about this position. c3 was the correct sort of strategy. We want to build our pawn central control. So you see, every move is a principal move. The last development. Okay. Yeah. c3, d4 we want to play. Here castling. Let's go now talk about prophylaxis. Prophylaxis is a move that in which we're preventing our opponent to play active with his pieces. So we want to pawn central control. We have talked about this. We're studying again the Rui Lopez. d4. But there is one piece that can bother our d4 pawn breakthrough. Which piece can that be? It's so far not attacking directly, but indirectly it could attack. So yeah, Devin answered the move h3 because, and again I'm talking about, you see, we are now in move 9, and we're just thinking differently about positions, and we're solving the main theory of the Rui Lopez. So h3 to stop bishop g4. So here bishop to b7. Can we do now our d4 pawn breakthrough? Are we having enough central protection? Yeah, it's old stuff, but I still think that everyone should start with the Rui Lopez. Why is that so? Because the Rui Lopez has many common strategies. So in the Rui Lopez, you see also isolated pawn situations. For instance, weak square, weak pawn positions. You see backward pawns. You see this Boleslavsky wall situations. These are names of pawn structures. You see King's Indian structures. You see Nimzo Indian motifs. You see really many of these common strategies. And when you solve a little bit the Rui Lopez, you will have a much better understanding of every opening than afterwards if you choose it. So everyone starts, I think, with the Rui Lopez, and if you're a beginner, you should always start first with the Rui Lopez, although you lose probably games. You lose many games in other openings too. So here, bishop to b7, d4 is the possibility, yeah. Okay, bishop to c2, also nice. Here, rook to e8. Let's develop now our next piece. We have talked about this locked bishop's position. So bishop to g5 would be a possibility, but we don't want to play it. We don't want to expose our bishop. So far, this is the game that has been played. So there are many lines, but we're studying now this line. So rook to e8, as we said, bishop to g5 is a possibility. But when we talk about bishops, here's the question: does the activity of this bishop improve by putting the bishop on g5? Is that really now such a better position on g5 than it is on on c1? So that's the question. Is the activity of the bishop on g5 better than the activity on of the bishop on c1? Yes or no? How do you feel it? How do you feel about that? They're not the same. I think Gioco Piano is more aggressive. Gioco Piano has really some sharp tactical lines. In the Rui Lopez, you can, I think, play 15, even 20 moves without getting into tactical troubles if you learn your stuff. Yeah, Devin answered the question. So the move bishop to g5 can be kicked away, and actually we did not so many great things. with that bishop. It is a playable line, but as I said, we want now to improve. How to improve? What's our next developing move? I mean, I look, this game we're analyzing because it's really a great game, and of course there are um, many sidelines that you can play, many variations. But I'll play a move, and I want you to realize that every move in this particular game was really sort of a principal move that we're trying to study in our series. So 92 was played here. And please, if you know which game this is, don't write it in the comment section below, because I really want you to see that this game is really strategical, really tactical, and that you can really understand the moves, understand the principle behind these moves. And although it was really one of the best games in chess history, so 92, 98-3 would be a possibility also, yeah. But there is one problem. The knight is on the edge of the board. I kind of like more this idea maybe to play knight d2, knight to f1, and knight to g3. This improves our activity. You can maybe play here knight to c2, then afterwards knight to a3, knight to c2. But actually what we're doing then with the move knight to c2, we're just protecting our pawn on d4. And I think so far, yeah, it's the same idea. We're just studying one game. So we're now really over with our lock bishop strategy. We're just analyzing one game. That's my whole concept. We're studying something like for 45 minutes, one hour, and then we're studying maybe half an hour, one game. I think it's a good concept. We can really study the masterpieces in chess history. So here, 92. So as I said, knight a3 is possible, then followed with knight to c2, but then you're just protecting your d4 pawn, and your d4 pawn is perfectly protected by the pawn on c3, by the knight on f3, which cannot be challenged because we played h3, and it's protected with our queen on d4. So there's no, it's not necessary to protect this pawn further. So here knight d2 was played. So here let's solve now one problem. Again, black has an expansion here on the queen side. We're breaking his main space advantage. How to do this? How to break black's space advantage without losing the pawn central control that we built here. So we have built here the pawn central control. We don't want to mess that up. So actually attacking the king side in for black is not good here. I'm not sure. Maybe you can send me one game, Tyrell. Let me know when you send it. Yeah, it's a4. Here h6 was played, and now it's time. Here I'm gonna play that next move. Bishop to c2 was played, improving the position of the piece. We have now e takes d4. Here c takes d4, and now a knight to b4. Very good. So again, the question, should we give up here the bishop pair? Should we give up the bishop pair in such a stage of the game? What do you think? Is it good? Is it can this be a closed game? Is it an open game? Can this be an open game? Should we give up here our light square bishop? Yeah, of course no, because this position is about to explode, and when the position is about to explode, you want to stay with your bishops on the board. Very, very important. So when you give up the bishop pair, it's very important then that you have a clear plan how to close the position or activate your knights. So You can send it right now uh, on my email. Maybe we can solve your problems. Here's my email. Mm. Here's my email, Tyrell. So you can maybe send me the PGN. I'll just put it into some leeches analysis, and then we can see what's your problem. Just let me know when you texted it, when you send me the message, the email. So bishop, uh, bishop. Here's the question: bishop to b3 or bishop to b1? Let's solve now this problem. Bishop to b1 or bishop to b3? Yeah, Fabi did that. Fabi did that actually because he explained it afterwards in his comments that he realized, and it was actually a great game. It was such a beautiful game by Fabiano Caruana that he actually realized that black, pardon me, that white will have problems to develop his bishops. But in this particular case, if you give up your bishop pair, I'm not sure if you're gonna stop these two bishops by black. And his game was different. His game was a static game, although it's a seemingly dynamic game, but he managed to create statics. you know Knights love static games, bishops love dynamic open games. So he secured a static game with his knight. He jumped all over the board, find good squares. The bishops were passive by white and similar stuff. So okay, the question: bishop b3, bishop to b1. So bishop b3 is said. Let's see. Here, the engine suggests, yeah, but uh, it's blocked out by its own pawn. But okay, why did we play here this setup? Why did we play that? Bishop to b3. Let's see, bishop b3. Here, the engine suggests bishop e4, knight e4, knight e4. What happens if rook to e4? Rook to e4 is not a possibility. So, okay, we have now 3 times this attack. Even c5 is a here possibility. Yeah, bishop b3 is a mistake, but actually, even if we didn't lose this pawn on e4, uh, after move bishop to b1, our goal of this whole setup is to get some kind of cool pawn breakthrough here. So, our goal was here to get some kind of an action here in the center, because we have the pawn majority in the center. We have a two versus 1 situation, and we want to break through. Okay, here black tried c5. Should we take d-take c5, or should we pass through with d5? That's now the question. Should we play d-take c5 or d5? Okay, we have a suggestion, e5. Okay, e5, d takes e5, d takes e5. Where to go now? Knight d5. How do you continue here? It's an okay pawn, it's supported, but actually it's an isolated pawn. Yeah, of course, Pablo, you can email me too. e5 loses our pawn central control here. I think we have these two connected pawns in the center. Then after e5, we're risking this isolated pawn situation. D takes c5. Again, the same stuff. D takes c5. e5. Maybe something even like knight to h5. Knight d7 is here also a possibility. Followed with knight to c6. Against which knight? How about counterattack on the knight with e5? Yeah, it is. Yeah, d5 is creating at least something, you know. First of all, what we can notice in PGN, yeah, you can send me in PGN. So d5 is at least protecting our central control that we have built here. We have now an advanced pawn. We have now space advantage. And the problem is now this knight is out of game. You know, this knight would love to come to c6 and then maybe to build a blockade against this backward pawn. You know, always these are really critical things in chess. Where to push pawn, yeah. Blocks his best bishop. He has the best bishop, and now he has. Let's be talk. We blocked out his bishop. This bishop is blocked out anyway. This knight is a little bit out of game. You know, it cannot move anywhere. You see, we have blocked out 3 minor pieces of blacks. And okay, not that our pieces are better, but still I think we can play afterwards something like knight to f1, knight to g3, knight to f5. And after knight to f1, still we're liberating this diagonal. And in one particular case, we could maybe even sacrifice the pawn just in order to improve this bishop's activity, maybe threatening with some checkmates. So far, of course, it's not possible, but as a long-term plan, as a long-term tactic, it could work, yes. So, okay, so do you like now more d5, e5, or d takes c5? Which one did you like now the most? So, okay. C5, queen b3 maybe, c5, queen b3. Okay, let's see that. C5, queen b3, c4, c4 maybe, attacking the queen. Gives us now an extra tempo. And it's quite good that you're saying these things, because in the next video we'll talk about problems of knights, we'll talk about problems of queens. The bishop and the queen, you should always, not always, but at least consider it sometimes in your own games. Here d5 was played, which is really the best move. The queen and the bishop can stay sometimes on their starting square and still have a great activity. So The pawn is not attacked twice. We have a protection with our pawn. I don't think that anyone is giving up a minor piece for 2 pawns. So here knight d7 was played. Now comes really a wild move by white. Again, this we have this question. So how to improve now our minor piece? Which pieces? This is the question. So which pieces are good? Which pieces are bad on the board? So first, let's answer this question. So which pieces are really bad? There are 2 pieces that are really, really bad. So which pieces need improvement? No, it's not a part of the tactic. I am not sure that. Yeah, it's not so good, I think. So knight on d2, bishop on c1. Actually, if we would just watch the knight would be perfectly fine. The knight would be perfectly fine. If the bishop wouldn't be here, this knight would be perfectly fine on d2. It's not the problem about this next activity. So the bishop on c1 is bad. There is also one piece that's really bad. You see now, both queens haven't played in the game. Also very important. Also very important that the queens haven't played, because we don't have to play sometimes with our queens on the board. Knight d2 needs improvement, very good, but there's also one piece that needs improvement. So the bishop we said, and one also piece, which is the second piece that needs improvement. Very good, the rook on a1. And let's now have candidate moves. How to improve the bishop, how to improve the rook. So how many candidate moves do we have? Let's first solve that question. How many candidate moves do we have? How many candidate moves in order to improve? We don't want to push pawns. This pawn is not possible. So when you cannot move pawns, then it's time to improve the pieces. So which piece can be improved? So I hope you get it. So when you don't have a good pawn move, then it's time to really improve your piece or minor piece, rook, queen, something like that. The queen will stay here so it's not about the queen now. So how many pieces? We have talked about two pieces. So the rook and the bishop needs activity. So there are how many candidate moves to improve? Yeah, that's very good. So the spiel of said rook from a1 to a3, or rook knight from d2 to f1. Which one do you like the most? Let's see the position after this one. Knight to f1 or rook to a3. Which one do you like more? Yeah, I've so this position or this position. Which one do you like more? So, okay, many of you said knight to f1, and actually you're right. Actually, you're right. When it comes to the pure computer evaluation, Very good. Look at how many you've written knight to f1, and it's very, very cool that you said knight to f1, because the player that's game we're studying, he played the move rook to a3, and it's unbelievable that it's here the evaluation after the move knight to f1 is +1 for white. We're continuing, of course, the game with the worst continuation, because it's a game by a world champion, but I wanted to show you how we can really, also a little bit with intuition, how we can really solve sometimes great positions. Knight to f1 is +1 evaluation here for white. After rook to a3, it's minus 0.1 for black. So a world champion played a worse move than you did, you know? Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? That's really cool, man. Yeah, Joshua said rook to a3. But as I said, knight to f1, much better. But our guy played here the move rook to a3. So very cool. Rook lift, yeah. But as I said, you had the most important thing was to realize here that there were two candidate moves in order to improve the position of minor pieces. But what is white trying to do with the move rook to a3? What is he trying to do? We've talked about this idea, how to play with rooks, and someone asked me today about rooks. I think it was Tyrell that asked me about rooks. What can we achieve with the move rook to a3? Yeah, there are many more attacking possibilities, maybe with rook to a3 or something. But what can we achieve with the move rook to a3? What have we said? Also, a very important stage of the opening of the middle game. What can we achieve by the move rook to a3? Yeah, rook to a1 to e3, very good. But what did we gain with the move rook to e3? How did we call that? How did we call the position after, let's see, rook f5, rook to e3? What did we gain here? What's the name? We have a rook connection. Rook connection. That's the term that we use. So the rook connection. And now you see the only piece really that needs improvement is maybe something like knight to f1, but that simply, yeah, double up rooks on the e file. So that was the continuation. So here black tried knight to f6. Here knight to h2 was played to get our queen active, because knight to f1 maybe would be a problem. Here knight takes e4, you see bishop takes e4, f takes e4, rook to e4, bishop to e4, pardon me, first of course rook takes e4, then bishop to d5. So you see how this idea to play with rook to a3 was worse than this idea knight to f1. You see, it was worse, but it was really a game played by the world champion. I'm going to reveal, of course, which game it was at the end. Here, f5, rook to e3, knight to f6, knight to h2. Yeah, and we want to push e5, of course, but when we push e5, we leave also our d5 pawn hanging. Here, king to h8 was played, b3, b takes a4, b takes a4, and now c4. So can we take now the pawn on c4? Would it be a good idea? Let's search again for candidate moves. Let's see now the best continuation for white. Should we take? Should we improve the position of one minor piece. Should we take in the center? Should we, I don't know. Let's think about the position and try to see now the best move. So it's not that this move is winning. I just want you to hang on to this position, try to solve positional problems of this position. So king h8, because of this light square problems, probably to secure the king a little bit further, to get out of the range of the potential maybe light squares, maybe preparing even g5 here, try to battle. So king to h8 was, I think, too a bad move. So king to h8 was the best of moves here. Queen d7, c4 can be played and similar stuff. King to h8, bad move simply. So it's a juicy pawn, but let's go here. So knight c4 is not a possibility because you lose your centralized pawn. So e5, knight takes d5, you know. So which would be the best move now to get again a new piece active? When we talked about, when you don't have good pawn moves, then it's time to improve the position of one minor piece. Bishop a3, okay, it is possible. Bishop to a3, attacking the knight, but I'm cementing the knight with a5 probably. Let me see if that was correct. Yeah, the engine gives also a5, so I was correct. So a5 would be then, you see, and then you really don't want to take this out because black will connect two pawns here on the queen side. So we have here queen to f3, very interesting move. I like the idea because we have played at least with one piece. Queen to f3, f takes e4, knight takes e4, and again d5 is hanging. So we have to be more active somehow. And bishop to b2, yeah, that's the great move, because we're targeting now here the king. We actually would love now that this king moves from this knight moves somewhere from the square, because then this bishop is a monster bishop, you know. This bishop becomes really active. So okay, after move bishop to b2, here f takes e4 was played. We have knight takes e4, knight from f to d5, and we got attacked. When we get attacked, and so as we said, we have retreat, sacrifice the rook, or finding a new square for the rook. So these are three options, and you should always first consider the option of a sacrifice, then of a reposition on the next active square, and then maybe to retreat. To retreat would be something like rook to e2, and it's not in our style how we want to play the game. A counterattack could be maybe something like queen to h5, maybe with ideas to play queen to h6, you know, but then c3 could happen. But at least we have some kind of a great position. Again, rook to c3 here, look, rook to c3, knight to f6. So there are now really some wild things going on, but that was all possible because we counterattack. We didn't retreat just with a rook to e2 and lean back, and we don't want to attack anymore. Queen to h5, counterattack, but there is queen to h5 is really the best suggested move, but wasn't played in the game. Here, in my opinion, I would immediately play the move queen to h5, but you see now we're thinking even harder than the world champion. Queen to h5, very good, yeah, queen to h5. But here in the game, white tried rook to g3, and it gives, again, equal position. It gives now black, again, the opportunity and we talked about this. When we get challenged, please just sometimes change your mindset in chess. When you get attacked, counterattack, not just retreat. When you have solved all the possible counterattacks, then it was really time to retreat. So here, rook to g3 was played, and it was a mistake here by a great player. We'll talk about that more. So rook to g3, here rook to e6 was played. Let's again search for improvements. Which piece needs improvement in the game? When we evaluate now all of our pieces, answer the questions. Rook to g3, yeah, it was played. Rook g3 was played, Tyrell, very good. And here now, which piece needs improvement? So which piece, again, we're asking ourselves the question, which piece is good, which piece needs improvement? And then when you solve that, you know the best next move afterwards. Okay, so which piece needs improvement? So then we know what we're doing. Knight d3 after bishop to b2. Knight d3 could be a possibility, yeah, for black to get rid of the bishop pair, but yeah, the knight from h2 needs improvement. And where to go with the knight? Yeah, knight g4 or knight to f3. Actually, very good, Andre. Very good answer by Andre. Knight g4 or knight to f3, because when we think about it, as we said, our bishop is good. Our bishop is good here. Our knight is good. This rook is good. The queen is good. Rook is good. Knight is bad on h2. So yeah, the queen. But as we said, here white didn't play the move queen to h5. He missed maybe a winning opportunity immediately, which is really incredible. Queen to h5, you know, leads into aggressive move. But I've talked about it. Bishop and queen, they have really a great activity even on their starting squares. You see this bishop, okay, it's not maybe on the starting square, but it's on the back rank. Still has a great activity. The queen has a great activity. This bishop, although it's far away, but it's a long range piece. So the queen and the bishops are long range pieces. So that's why we don't have to play sometimes with these pieces because they're still having good activity. So yeah, queen h5 probably still the best move. But let's see now, queen to h5. Now c3 could happen, and you're back. We have back problems. That was all possible before white played the move rook to g3. Rook to g3 was a mistake, as we said. Queen to h5 much more aggressive, but now it's time to improve the piece. So here knight to f3 or knight to g4. Here white tried knight to g4, and queen to e8 was played, and we have now the critical moment of this beautiful chess game. So there is this series, if you have followed my YouTube chess channel, there is this series how to spot chess tactics. Has anyone watched my series how to spot chess tactics on my YouTube chess channel? Has anyone followed that? So in that series, how to spot chess tactics, I help you out. I created some videos in which I help you out how to recognize tactical possibilities. So how to recognize a possible tactical shot. And I came to this idea because of this particular game, although I didn't show this game in the series. And in this game, it's quite unbelievable the guy that said that that there is a rule in chess, and it's a beautiful rule, and it's really great rule, which says you should search for tactics when you have more attackers than defenders, you know. And let's calculate now the defenders. Let's calculate now the defenders in front of Black's king. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Tyrell, maybe for my King's Indian series, but actually the series that I like the most are, for myself at least, are the series How to Spot Chess Tactics. So we have now 5 defenders, like that guy said also when he analyzed the game. And then I came to the idea, and then I searched for ideas how to show you how you can improve your tactics. Here's the question: how many attackers does White have? How many? Count the attackers. Please count the attackers and then write it in the comments. How many attackers against Black's king does White have here? How many? So it's a thinking process that you have to sometimes make in order to get a tactical shot. So how many attackers does White have here? Seven. Yeah, let's count them. Let's count. Maybe 7. Okay, look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 attackers. It's like the guy said. I'm going to reveal, of course, who that is, but knight to h6. There are 7 attackers here dancing around the king, and Black has only 5 defenders. So it's time for a tactical shot. It's time for, and we have also, and it's also to notice, which is also sort of a thing that you have to recognize, we have the weakened pawn structure in front of the king. So first of all, what we can notice, the king is endangered. The pawn move is already there. The pawn is already weakened in front of the king, so it's time now for search for tactics. And of course, it's really hard now to see everything what White saw here, but the great tactic was here, the move knight to h6. And let's see, if you try rook to h6, what can happen? Then we could try knight to d6 here. If you try rook d6, what will happen? Then bishop to g7, and yeah, because queen d2, yeah. So here in the game, c3 was played, a counter-attack. We have talked about attacks. Do we have to retreat, or are we searching for counter-attacks? After the move c3, of course, we said we don't want to retreat. We want to now counter-attack. What would be a nice counter-attack here? After the move c3, so let's see what happens if. So what would be first our question? What's the great counter-attack? But this is really complex. You cannot see really everything. It's just a great. Knight f6. You see, we have some problems here also on the e file. Queen d5. Counterattacks, yeah. Counterattack. When you get attacked, counterattack. Sometimes it's possible, but sometimes it's not. But at least That's always what I'm trying to say. When you get attacked, at least consider the option of a counterattack. Never retreat first. Never. Rook takes g7, also a possibility, but our opponent has locked now. Here, this diagonal with the move c3. So our knight is hanging. So knight f7 is then queen to f7, knight takes c3, and similar stuff. Nothing is going on. So we have to find a better move. It's maybe not an immediate clear attack, but at least we're dancing. We're dancing around the king. We're still... Queen g4. Let's see queen g4. Now rook to h6. Rook takes c3. Knight takes... You see, we have again these problems. Knight takes d6 is not working because here of these problems on the e file. You will lose your... It's now a retreat, but because the problem is this: after the move c3, this diagonal is locked. Queen to h5 is not working because queen takes h5. So let's see. Okay, I'm doing this for you. This one first is knight to f5. Now queen c takes b2 was played. Let's see now the best next move. Let's see now. Well, now it's time to include every piece in the attack. Still, we have an attack majority here, so we have still let's see, 1 2 3 4 6 attackers against 4 defenders. Let's include now the next piece. Let's include now the next piece into the attack. Find the next. Again, we are asking ourselves the question: which pieces are good? Which piece now really needs improvement? So queen g4, very good, very good. Queen g4. Now we have a new heart. Okay, here we lost a piece, but still these pieces are too far away from the action. These pieces are not participating. Here bishop to c8 was played. Now, yeah, very good. Now let's attack one more time. Let's find now our next best move. Yeah, I'm streaming because it's the only time that I have to stream. I can stream, so you know, I'm a married guy. I have to find time for everything. I'm going to follow the Tata still. It's not so important for me. It's knight g7. Knight g7 could be a possibility. Let's see. It's not bad. Rook g6 maybe. Rook g6, queen g6, and it's not a problem. Queen to g6, rook takes g6, bishop to g7. So queen h4, very good, Terrell. Yeah, very good. Simple queen to h4, first a check. We're getting out of the range. Here, rook to h6 was played, covering everything. Here, knight takes h6, g takes h6. And now comes really a brilliant move. It's the so-called quiet move. It's a really quiet move here. Okay, let's find now the best next move. Really, it's really great move. One of the most beautiful moves even in chess history, I think. There is one problem that we have, and we have it. Okay, I'm gonna see my email. So Paulo, today after this game, it will be over for today. And please, guys, send me your games in the email Yozarov at gmail.com. I'm gonna write it again. Just write something like it's for the purpose of a stream, and then we can also make maybe a 2-hour lesson just with your games. Knight g5. As we said, we have problems here on the e file. So how to solve these problems on the e file without messing up our activity? How to do that? Let's find now the the most quiet move in chess history. I'm just kidding. I'm overhyping it. Sorry, but so as I said, you're very good. King to h2. That's the spirit, Ashes. So king to h2. Very cool. Okay, I'm gonna read really all of your emails. And then we'll make in the next video we'll make just your games, and I'll try to see what were your problems. And the next stream will be in 2 days, so not tomorrow, but I want you to send me games that bother you, and especially I want you to send me what bothers you in that game, or maybe you have some problems in the openings, or you're doing this the mistakes all over. I don't want to see your winning games. Sorry, I hope you understand it. I don't want to see you brutalizing every I just want to have a base of games that really are bothering you, and king to h2 was the best move. Thank you for Ashes for very cool move, because we can play now freely. We can play now maybe some more knight moves. We will lose the rook, but the queen will also leave the protection of the king. So very nice calm move, king to h2. So so as I said, just let me know. It's for the purposes of the stream, and on Sunday we're making the stream about really your game. So okay, we have here king to h2, queen to e5 was played, and now you already talked about this move. Now it's time to play the next best move. So okay, let's find now the best next move. Now this is the position. We have solved our problems on the e file. Our rook is, although it's hanging, it's not about rooks anymore. So now it's time to finish the game. So just get some messages from my yeah, knight g5, knight g5 Ashes, very good. It doesn't matter if we lose now this rook. This is simply too much to handle. Queen to f6 was played. Let's now activate the next piece, bring our last piece into the attack. So let's see what happened if rook to queen takes e1 happens. Then knight to f7 is a checkmate. So that's why here black had to protect this position with queen to f6. So what to do now? Again, that's how we think. I hope we'll try to change our mindset. So as we said, we're validating the pieces, they're good, they're active, and we validate the pieces that they're not active. Then this piece needs improvement. This piece needs new activity. That's how you attack. So first of all, ask yourself the question, which piece is great, which piece is not great, and then that piece that's not great needs improvement. So Rook e8, yeah, that's simply, it's in our blood now. Attacking chess is in our blood. Rook to e8, you see now this setup. Look at this setup. It's game over here. So bishop to f5 was played, trying to compete. This rook's activity on the back rank gave us now a huge attacking opportunity. Let's find out the best next move. Yeah, rook e8 easy, but I just wanted to point you out that that's how you attack, that's how you evaluate your pieces. So there are not many choices. Knight to f7 is a possibility to deflect the queen from the defense. If queen to f7, then queen to h6 comes, you see. Very tricky stuff. Queen to h7, queen to f8, and similar stuff. So, but here in this game, white didn't play the most accurate move. Yeah, we have here by Tyrell, queen takes pawn, queen takes h6, very great move. If queen takes h6 happens, here then we have knight to f7. Here bishop to f5 was played, queen to g6. We can take out this one, we can take out this one, and it was simply game over. Here rook to b8, here a5, but now bishop to e4, king to f7. This was a messed up game. Bishop to d5, and in this position black resigned, and it's okay. It's very important that you saw this attacking moves. Of course, we're playing this. This was a classical time format game. Of course, you have then time to calculate, but this was the game played by Garry Kasparov against Anatoly Karpov from the World Chess Championship in 1990, the famous game 20. And you see, you have solved many things from one of the most beautiful chess games in history by just changing a little bit your thinking process in chess. So I hope you realize what I'm trying to do here on my stream, because sometimes we get deflected by our normal ideas, or sort of beginner's mistakes, by the stuff that's bothering us all over and all over again. We're not activating all of our pieces. We're not asking ourselves the question, which piece needs improvement. We're trying to be fast in the attack. We don't include every piece in the attack. So I hope this is helpful, because I'm trying here to really to change some of yours, at least some thinking process, because it's all about that. I think a normal chess player can solve, for instance, a 2, 3, 4 move tactic, but when you don't feel chess, when you don't think about tactics, then you cannot see tactics, because you're not thinking about tactics in Garry Kasparov was right. So yeah, and when you don't think about tactics, then you will never find tactics. When you just always retreat with your pieces, then you will never find tactics. You will never find great tactics. You will maybe win games in which your opponent makes blunders, but in this at least in this I don't know, 2000 level, you have to find tactics. When your opponent attacks you, don't retreat. Sometimes, as I said, it's important to recognize a counter tactical shot, and the thinking process is really important. It messes up our whole game sometimes, because we think too passive, and you see, it's all about aggression. Although this game had, of course, inaccuracies, mistakes, blunders, but you saw Garry Kasparov never, in many cases, he didn't see maybe the best engine line, but he found always great attacking opportunities. He just kept pushing. He pushed really Karpov here to the limits, to his tactical limits. Karpov splashed, he broke, and here it was really one of the most beautiful games in chess history. So Oh, Luca watched the whole stream. Oh man, that's. I'm not going to use the F word, but we're gonna say that's freaking awesome. So Luca watched the whole damn stream. Then we do a Luca special. We'll do Luca special. So the thinking process, as we said, really wild stuff. As Gotti had some better opportunities, but as we said, here it's really this tiny little differences. Rook to a3 with rook to e3 or knight to f1. But at least, as we said, at least you have considered the option to remaneuver a piece, because you realize that something is wrong with one piece or two, that this piece is needed improvement. And in the beginning, as we said, we played about this bishop's activity, so it's also a very important thing. So be careful with your bishops, where to go with them. And probably you hear the bell ringing. My boy is coming from the kindergarten, and it's now simply his time. See you soon. See you on Sunday, and chess is the best, of course. Bye. I'm going to reveal you, of course, your games that you send me on email, and we're going to study them in the next video. So bye bye. Chess is the best.